Hi everybody, welcome to the Top 2 Inches of Sport podcast with me, Anthony Sheriff. This is a podcast about something that's always fascinated me, the mindset required to succeed in elite level sport. On this podcast, I'm going to talk to people who I really look up to in the world of sport and try to find out how they deal with the highs and lows that come with consistently striving for success in the unforgiving environment of elite sport. For this week's episode of the podcast, I spoke to former professional footballer Keith Fahey. Keith is perhaps best known for his time playing in the English Premier League with Birmingham City and also for winning 16 caps with the Republic of Ireland national team, where he also scored 3 goals along the way. I absolutely loved this chat with Keith because he was very open and honest about his life and also the mental side of the game. Just listening to Keith tell his story, it gave a very different perspective really of what many of us probably consider life as a professional footballer to be like. He talks about his relationship with the game now and also his plans for the future. Really genuinely enjoyed this one and hopefully you will as well. So here's this week's episode of the Top 2 Inches of Sport with Keith Fahey. There we go. Right, Keith, brilliant to have you on the podcast. I think you're probably the first footballer, to be honest, that I've had on the podcast that I actually vividly remember playing, Premier League or watching play Premier League football and international football. So brilliant to have you on. So thanks very much for taking the time.
Good stuff. Thanks for having us on. If we can help out in any way, we will.
Yeah, happy days. So yeah, we'll talk about your career, all the different parts of it, whether it be League of Ireland, Premier League, even international football as we go on. We just want to start off asking you about where it started off. So you grew up in Tallaght in Dublin and you ended up, I think, playing for Cherry Orchard, which is a club in Dublin that, it's a very good standard. I think most young lads playing at that level, playing with Cherry Orchard, they probably have half a chance of getting a trial at some stage. So when you're playing at that level, would you have been a confident young lad playing? And did you realise how good you were?
Well, hold on, there's someone waving at me outside there. Mary. Jesus. But I tell you, I started playing locally for my local side, Time and Bond, in Tallaght, yeah. And I would have played a lot of football away from the football club and all that. I would have played football in the schoolyard, out on the road here, around in the field, in the house, in the utility room, anywhere I could play, I did, so. And I played for Time and Bond. I was only talking to my old manager the other day, Peter White, around the corner, and I played for Time and Bond. Back then it was all 11-a-side. It was all 11-a-side even at under 9s. I think it started around that. But I played there at about 7 years of age, played 2 years up, and eventually at about 11 or 12, I think it was about 12 years of age, went to Cherry Orchard because I was very good and I was probably too good for what standard I was playing in, but I was happy like that. I always say this and I always remind myself, I started off playing football because it was fun, it was a game, I enjoyed it, and and then I suppose when I got to about 12 years of age I had to go somewhere else because I was that good, and went to Cherry Orchard then. And one thing that stands out for me going to Cherry Orchard, I used to be afraid getting the bus down. I used to have to get the bus down to Ballyfermot on my own, and I used to be filled with fear on the bus, clutching onto my bag, hoping that nobody would rob me. So getting down there and then playing a bit of football around people that I didn't really know was kind of pushing me out of my comfort zone a good bit now, an awful lot. So I had a few years there and then went away to England. But I think my best days, my happiest days were probably when I was at Time and Bond, no pressure on you. You're going down the local field with your pals from the school and getting there early and knocking footballs into the nets and all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was reading up about you before and I came across this story that you were actually really good at playing soccer with a tennis ball. Is that true, yeah? Did that kind of develop your technical skills an awful lot, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. I played in the house with a tennis ball. I played up in the schoolyard, and it didn't matter what size it was, the football or the tennis ball. And I used to love practicing day in, day out with a tennis ball in the utility room. And obviously, I think that was where I developed me kind of my technical skills. I think looking back on it, I was really comfortable with a ball at my feet, and the tennis ball definitely helped out,
Yeah, so you're saying you're playing a bit with the tennis ball. You mentioned there a few minutes ago as well about playing out on the street. I kind of have you in that bracket of that kind of street footballer. You think of Ian Wright and all back in the day, like Wayne Rooney, these kind of people that kind of learned their trade a little bit on the street. Do you think that's kind of lost a little bit nowadays? You know, that kids are almost overcoached in academies now, more so than talking to football people. I've spoken to a lot of people in rugby in the past, and they talk about rugby academies being where there's that bit of overcoaching. It's very, very rigid, where it's kind of that bit of individual kind of expressing themselves is a bit lost. Would you say that is that a little bit lost in nowadays with football academies?
I think personally, I developed a lot of my skill on my own. You know, like I don't think you can coach that. You know, like certain things in football. Like nobody taught me how to play a true ball. Taught me how to see the gaps in the defense and all that sort of stuff. You can't teach that. You know what I mean? That was walking through the house with a tennis ball, finding gaps in doors and all I used to do. You know, so I would agree like that. I done a bit of coaching stuff, and I would agree, and I've always said that up to a certain point, I think it needs to be just the kids playing and enjoying it. Like there needs to be a little bit of structure on it, obviously, but I think from an early age, I think from what I've seen, I've experienced it firsthand that kids are nearly told where to stand, what way to run, and you know, all that sort of stuff. And like I get it at times, but a lot of the stuff needs to really come from them. I personally feel that they need to be given back ownership of their game, because it's their game. Coaches and like that, be careful what I say, but my opinion on it is that the coaches are taking it off the kids at a young age, and it's all about the coach, and I don't agree with it. So like that, I think we have to be careful. I'm not involved in football now, I've stepped away from it because it's not the same for me. The person I am, I played football because I enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved playing the game, like, but it's not the same for me. My experience is when I stopped playing football, I've no real interest in it, you know, like, and like that, if kids are coming up and not getting a chance to run around and blow off a bit of steam even and run free, like, I think we're taking the fun out of it, being honest. Like, and I get it, a certain point in your life as kids growing up playing football, there needs to be changing the competitive levels and all that sort of stuff. I get that, but I just think the squeeze is coming down on them a lot younger now. And like as well, I'll say as well, like I kind of played free, and was it because it was allowed or because it was me outlet? You know, I think any kid that goes and plays a game of football has the ability or the freedom to do as they please on the pitch, you know. So it's not as straightforward as like what I just said, to say it's all the coaches taking the fun out of it. The kids, again, like they spend a lot of time indoors playing computers, all that sort of stuff, you know. And then we have parents, another dynamic in it, that probably expect their kid to be doing better, etc., and they might not be doing as well as what they think they should be, and then it's the coach's fault. It's not the kid for doing the practice, you know. So there's a whole lot of dynamics. I think personally, looking back in and my own experience, it has to boil down to the individual. Nobody made me a footballer, you know. I carved it out with hard work and developed my own skills, and I listened to coaches when I wanted to listen. A lot of times I didn't, you know, because I had a kind of an attitude or a drive. I know better, you know, and I'm not saying that was right, but I had that drive in me to try my own things and to do it the way I perceive to be the right way, and it worked out for me. Like, you know, you might have heard stuff in interviews before in the past where I was off the wall behind the scenes, you know. I was up to stuff that I shouldn't have been doing as a footballer, you know. But I think as well, something that's important to mention, that we say you're a footballer, people still call me a footballer. Now I'm wearing a football top, but I like wearing that. It's not because I want to be called a footballer. I'm not a footballer. And I think the younger we start labelling kids footballers, the more problems are created. Because then when you get out of football at the end, who are you? Like, who are you now? Like, so I'm still transitioning. And I just think, look, I've been involved in football a long time. I'm going a bit of a rant here, by the way, but I've been involved in football a long time. And I just think... getting into it, I didn't get into it to become a footballer. I got into it because it was fun. It was a game, and I get it that it needs to change. But it's a difficult industry. Like, I call it an industry because it is. Like, you know, we want to make money, sell players, and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, look, I'm going to ramble there, so I'll let you jump in, Pat.
No, but yeah, you're saying, like, when you were starting off just in Dublin, you were playing, it was just the love of the game that you were playing it for. and obviously you're very naturally good at it, but was there still a drive within you to make it to England? This is even before you went to Arsenal first. Were you really driven to actually make it as a footballer?
Being honest with you, I couldn't tell you whether like black or white, yes or no.
Yeah.
I did have a drive in me that was going to make me a footballer anyway, whether I liked it or not, you know. And that, I feel, kept me alive, being honest, you know. Like when I went away to Arsenal at age 15, I went because I was good at football. I was going to the club I supported, and I didn't know what was in front of me, you know. I just went because that was happening. I was good, and I was going, and I ended up back here. I ended up back in Ireland many times in between them contracts and all that, not wanting to go back and all that sort of stuff. But something kept me going, and the drive was on. Like, you know, when I come back here and played with Pats in the early 20s, I was happy enough playing football, but away from football, I was up to all sorts that I shouldn't have been doing, you know. But I suppose it's just been lucky, you know, hard work, talent, being very, very, very resilient and strong character deep down. And others will try and put you down, you know. And yeah, so I suppose I just had the drive to get there, and I absolutely believe that it's from the individual. It's like the coaches will take all the credit, you know what I mean? But it's down to the individual and the environment and the dynamics of the parents, the coaches. There's so much to it. Like, you know, I was just lucky.
Yeah.
I said I was lucky, but it was a lot of hard work, you know.
No, I can imagine, yeah. So when you were 15, you joined Arsenal. You just said that's your boyhood club. Was that like the first club that came into you or came in for you from England, and was it just a no-brainer because you supported them, or did you have trials with other clubs?
I was on trial. I went on trial to a good few clubs in England. I went on trial to probably about 12, 13, maybe 14 clubs in England, like, and I ended up signing for Arsenal because I supported them. I liked it. Like, what? Like, you ask a 14-year-old boy, why did you sign for Arsenal? Because I supported them. End of story. It wasn't because I could see where I was going to live and it was all going to be great. It was just, I support this team. I want to sign for them. You know, real this kind of way. Like, but look, I went to many, many different clubs. I went to Liverpool, I went to play Blackpool, I went to all sorts of different clubs, like, to get a look around. And would I say any of them felt at home? I wouldn't say any of them did, you know. But I went to Arsenal because I followed them. Yeah.
Did any of those 14 clubs like actually want you to sign?
Now that you mention it, there was always talk of, yeah, we'll get you back and we'll talk and we'll, you know. But I remember vaguely remember around the time, I think my manager then, John Burke, was kind of saying, look, hold fire, there's going to be more clubs coming in for you soon. And Man City actually wanted me to sign as well. But I think when you get a contract, when Keith got his contract offered to him, his dad downstairs in the house and all that, it was like, this might never happen again, you know. The chance of going to like your boyhood club that you supported, it might not come around again, you know. And if you don't sign that, and are you waiting, are you being greedy? Look, I was living my boyhood dream, going and playing for the team, supported, and it literally was the stuff dreams are made of, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I often think of young lads getting over to England from Ireland, and it's just a no-brainer for them. Like you've said, it's the club you support. It's all of our dream to go and play Premier League. So every young lad will probably just want to get on the next flight over. But I sometimes think it's probably more tough anyway for the parents, because it's difficult to let your son go over at 14, 15 years of age to a new country, living in digs and things like that. So but also you probably don't want to deny them the chance to live their dream either. So it's a difficult situation. What were your parents like? Were they very supportive? Were they very involved in the decision making, or did they just leave it up to you almost completely?
Yeah, so I'll speak about my family for a little bit, because I think it's important, like, that kids that go away, we're not all from the same kind of upbringing and stuff like that. I came from kind of I'm actually I'm in the middle of doing an assignment in child psychology and child development, and how social forces affect development and all that. And I've picked my own bit of story to do research on as well. I came from like the divorce, separation, a broken up family, a lot of conflict, a lot of stuff going on. And I would have carried a lot of shame and stuff like that. And like as a child, didn't, excuse me, I didn't have the rational mind to think like an adult and say, this isn't your fault. So I internalised all that sort of stuff that was going on. Said, this is like, I've done something wrong here. And I carried that around for me most of my life. So going away at age 15, my mother and father were broken up. I was living with my father and my brother. And my dad, God rest him, like literally just guided me and never really got involved. He supported me and just open the door. If you want to go through it, go through it. You know what I mean? And my mother, like I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, and so I couldn't tell you what way she felt about it and stuff. So yeah, and I think it's important that, like I've spoken about that lately in a little very small amounts, because like that, there's other people involved, and
yeah.
But it had a profound effect on my life, that sort of stuff, And when I say football kept me alive, I mean that, because I was on a path of self-destruction and all that sort of stuff. So, thankfully for me, it worked out that I got a good career out of football, regardless of what was going on. And yeah, I'm sitting here to tell the tale. So yeah.
Yeah. Even back in them early days, and just hearing about some, difficulties you had during your childhood, even in those early days, would football have been a form of escapism almost for you, just away from different problems you were experiencing?
Absolutely, yeah. Football was always an escape for me. As much as I loved it as a child, I didn't realise that it was providing an outlet again in that assignment. I'm seeing stuff that I can relate to. I could practice mindfulness in football where I couldn't sit with myself when I wasn't playing football. When I was playing football as a child, I was very present. All my problems weren't with me, you know what I mean? And I had that outlet, and I was getting a chance to practice because I have an obsessive mind. Like I'm an addict, you know what I mean? I like to do things, and I like to do them to extremes. And when I knew I was good at football, I practiced and practiced and practiced and wanted to be better all the time, So that obsessive drive in me drove me on to great things, and the drive to be noticed and for people to want me and stuff like that, because I would have deeply down probably thought I'm not wanted, So I had a drive in me to show that I was important,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all relevant like that. That's the stuff deep down that, like, I have this mind as well, like, and I speak about it now. Like, a great vision on the football pitch. And I also have to look a little bit deeper, because there's always more, you know what I mean? There's always more going on than what we think is going on. So I have the mind, I need to know more. I need to know the truth about myself, because if I can't know the truth about myself, I can't be free. And I need to be free of myself to be sitting here and talking.
Yeah. Yeah, you sound like a very deep thinking man. Like, there's a lot of things going on in your head. So I'm just trying to put myself in your boots. When you go over and you live in, what I'm assuming you're living in digs when you go over to Arsenal, which is probably just put in with like a random family. As much as you're living the dream, training with Arsenal, playing with Arsenal and all that kind of stuff, there's probably an awful lot of spare time there where you're kind of a young lad from Tala living over in London, not really probably knowing anyone. So mentally, was living in digs a very difficult time for you, or did you actually enjoy it?
Did I enjoy it? No, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't. I really didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy me time really when I was away. Excuse me. Emotionally, mentally, I wasn't well. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. And I would have been out. I wouldn't say, like, the way I speak about it, people probably think I was out every night of the week. I would have been out more than I should have been out. Like, it was 15 years of age. I shouldn't have probably been drinking, but I was drinking far before that, So, yeah, I found it difficult. I suppose looking back at the time, I just thought, this is the way life is, Like, I would have been around people doing the same thing, and that was normal to me, But looking back in now, it was like, I'd always find the people that were doing the same things, and I'd end up in trouble, I used to end up in physically battered from drinking and all, and I wouldn't be in a good state at all. But then you have the emotional stuff and the mental stuff as well. So I was never really in a good state. So living in digs was very difficult for me. I didn't like sitting with myself. I wasn't comfortable. I used to think it's the house I was in, and I generally thought that I'd move to another house. I don't like it here either. I moved to another house. I don't like it in here after a while, and like that, I realised then after a long time that I didn't like sitting with myself. I didn't like the feeling, like so. And that change, I speak about it as well. That changed then from houses to clubs, like so. I moved football clubs, always on the run, and I didn't understand. I hadn't any insight into how I was, supposed to be feeling. I was just in fight or flight, like.
Did you speak to anyone at Arsenal? Was there even any sports psychologist in the club back then? Or even I'm just thinking about Arsenal, like Liam Brady, a fellow Dubliner. I mean, he was heavily involved in the academy, wasn't he? Like, did he, like, if he ever saw you going down a wrong path, did he ever reach out to try kind of steer you right?
It's a laugh now he mentioned, because I remember one time we went out when we shouldn't have went out. We went into train the next day, and Liam spoke to us. He spoke to a couple of us, and I won't tell you the full story, but we got in a little bit of trouble, and then I don't remember now. Again, I couldn't tell you the exact truth of what it was like, because I don't remember ever being offered help or whether I was asked, do we need help. I don't remember it, but I wouldn't say it wasn't offered. And then when I wanted to leave Arsenal, Liam was very good to me, he was really good to me. And then he said, look, Keith, we know you've been messing around. So that was kind of it, yeah. And I ran away, shit, he knows, I'm out here.
Yeah. So it was actually your decision to leave Arsenal, and you wanted out, you wanted to go to Aston Villa, yeah?
I wanted to go, yeah, because I thought the grass was greener somewhere else. I thought it would have been better somewhere else where there was more Irish. I was always looking for a reason as to, that's why I'm not feeling good. There's not enough Irish people here or something like that. I'll go there, there'll be more there, and then I'll be happy, like,
Yeah. Yeah. So clubs, like, they're massive clubs, Aston Villa, Arsenal, all those type of clubs nowadays, even in the academies, would have a lot of sports psychologists working with the young lads. Like, this isn't even going back that long ago. This is only late 90s, early 90s. You were there. But was there any sports psychology set up in the academies for either of those clubs back in those days?
I don't recall them, being honest. I do remember the odd time someone would come in, maybe once or twice a year, and give a talk on something. Usually it was nutrition, something like that. Was there sports psychologists? Maybe there was, and they delivered it to us in a way that we didn't hear the big buzzwords and all that. I don't know, but from what I remember, I don't recall any sports psychologists around that time anyway,
Yeah. So when you left Aston Villa, then you ended up coming back home to Ireland. Again, similar to my last question about leaving Arsenal, was that your decision? Had you enough of England, or like, was just your contract just not renewed?
My contract wasn't renewed. I had done well, and I came home one summer and didn't want to go back, and I didn't go back. And then when I decided I want to go back now, I went back for a couple of months and was released, like, so, and then I ended up coming home, yeah.
But again, like most Irish young lads, they love their football. They spend most of their days probably daydreaming about playing in England. But just hearing you talk about your experiences in the academy, although I'm sure there's a bit of sadness that you're leaving the English Premier League, is there almost a bit of relief that you're going home as well at that stage?
It would have been for me, yeah. There was relief, like, I know, like, everyone, like, kids want to be footballers, but again, it's not, my experience isn't the same as everyone else. Some lads go over and take to it like a duck to water and love it, like, but for me, I think, like, considering the family background, all that, my upbringing, I was different than most, and really struggled, and always felt like I was lost, like, so when I came home, then it was grand. I was able to go out, and I thought, again, I'm missing out on stuff that my friends are doing at home, like going out on nights out and all, and I was able to do all that and then play football as well. But yeah, that was really it, madness, absolute madness.
Yeah. So like I think you have 5 years in the League of Ireland and successful years as well. I think even 2008 maybe you were the PFAI Player of the Year, which is the best player in the league. So like at what stage within those 5 years do you reckon the mindset shifts from I'm happy to be back home to actually right, this actually needs to be a springboard to go back to England? Because you will have heard a million times coaches with the cliches of like don't regret, like 10 years down the line you don't want to regret your career, football's a short career, all these things, which are all true. So like at any stage in those 5 years, at what stage, sorry, throughout those 5 years does your mindset shift to no, I need to get back and finish what I started in England?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I remember I done well at Pats. I had a good couple of years, and then I signed for Drogheda, and I got sacked. Drogheda, Paul Dillon sacked me, which for coming in drunk into training a few times, and I went back to Pats. Then Pats took me back, thank God, and I had a drive in me kind of, and it was nearly to say I'll show Drogheda what they're missing. You know, I always needed something to spark me, like to go, I'll show you. You know what I mean? And then what happened with me was, I seen other players going away, and I thought, I'm bleeding better than them. Like, you know, I could think that at a head level, I'm better than them, but deep down, I didn't feel like I was. You know, I always felt inferior to everyone, and so I had to develop a very big ego and go, right, you know what, I'm going back to England, and the drive was on then, and I think the last season, it was probably midway through the second last season, and the last season I just kept the foot on the pedal, and thank God that I got to move away, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. So you got to move to Birmingham. You moved to Birmingham in January, which would have been the middle of the season, and they were in the championship at that stage. So you're there for the second half of the season. I think you make 19 appearances, score 4 goals, and you end up getting promoted to the Premier League. First of all, actually, did you have any chance to go to any other clubs, or was there rumours of Roy Keane at Sunderland was interested in you, or am I making that up?
I think Birmingham. I knew. Speaking to someone, they were letting me know that Birmingham were watching me and stuff like that, and I was doing well. I was scoring goals and playing well, and then we played in Europe against Hertha Berlin, and I done well again, and they signed me off the back of them games, like so. No, I don't think there was anyone else coming in with offers anyway. There might have been a bit of interest, but there was no cash on the table. You know?
Yeah, but like I said, you played 19 games that season. You got promoted. You scored 4 goals. So it doesn't seem like you took to it like a duck to water. But was there an unbelievable step up compared to the League of Ireland going into the Championship?
I think in training, like we trained well at Pats. We had a great team in training as well. We had great trainers. A lot of us, like Barry Ryan, Mark Dempsey, I could go through them all, Alan Kirby. There was a real good bunch. And then when I went away, I remember the first day of training, actually, it was brilliant. Like, they're obviously better standard players, and that's not knocking the Irish League, but like a beautiful pitch, like goals out ready and all. It was just great. And training, the first day went really well. I slotted in well. Took me a while to make my debut, and when I did, I done okay. And then I eventually started starting games and played out on the left. And scored a few goals. Yeah, scored on the last day of the season, scored on the second last day of the season, got a couple of assists, and like that. I remember Paul Dillon used to play me on the left for Drogheda, and it used to drive me mad, you know. But like, we don't know what's in store for us. And then a couple of years later, I'm playing Championship and then Premier League and left side of midfield, you know. And a lot of the stuff Paul would have done in training served me, because he would have likened to have a strong midfield defensively, you know, and he taught us a lot about tucking in and stuff like that. And I took it into the Premier League, and I was nearly like a second left back at times, but it kept me in and around the first team. You know, if you're winning 1-0, I was generally brought on to stop us conceding. But I was a very different player in England again the second time round than I was in Ireland, you know.
Yeah, but no, like Birmingham City, really big club, and they become a Premier League club when you're there. So, what's the sports psychology situation like in the club there? Like, have they got lots of different sports psychologists? Have they got one fella working with you, or what way did it work?
Again, sports psychologist. I ended up talking to a psychologist anyway in the club, and I think it was to do with bereavement. I think when my dad died, I think I ended up talking to a man in the club about, I think it was more counselling, being honest with you.
Yeah.
Again, it was probably delivered to me like this fella's trying to help you with your football, but maybe someone saying that I had a few issues and I needed to speak to someone. I was struggling after the time my dad died, especially, and sports psychologists. Again, Anthony, I don't remember, Paul. I really don't. And I might not be just being able to remember it, but I don't remember as
Yeah.
such. Mm.
What about then just your actual match day routine, if you like, mentally before a game? Did you have a process you would go through? Were you the type of fella that would maybe need to pump himself up? Would you go really calm, or like what was your mental process, if you like, before you play a game?
Yeah, my process would be like I enjoy structure, I enjoy habits and stuff like that, So I would have prepared. I love preparing for things, So getting my gear ready, all that sort of stuff, and even getting the boots on, getting the shin guards on, stuff like that. Just trying to do things in order in my head, So like if I'm doing this, the next phase will be okay, So yeah, no mad match day routines. I don't think just habits.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
habits. Even when you're not playing well or whatever, just sticking to them kind of habits.
How would you be with the nerves before a game? Because I'm just thinking of some of the games you played in. I think your Premier League debut was away at Man United, Old Trafford, like 70, 80,000 people. In 2011, you won the League Cup final for Birmingham, funnily enough against Arsenal, actually. Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people. You will have played big games for Ireland, things like that. Like, the bigger the occasion, were you able to keep your nerves the same as like a regular game, or keep your process the same, or did you ever kind of feel like an occasion got to you?
I felt again. I remember the period of my life after my dad died. I was probably struggling, definitely struggling, and I remember not feeling too confident going out to play football, and that wasn't that never. I don't think it was ever like that. Like I probably never really believed in myself, but I was never really nervous going out to play football because, like I said earlier, it was natural for me. Like, and I developed my skills. I was comfortable with the ball at my feet and stuff like that. Um, yeah, so even the cup final with Arsenal, against Arsenal, sorry, I wasn't. I was nervous to hear what would I be playing, and when I heard I was playing, it's like right, brilliant. But a little bit of nervous tension, but nothing that was going to throw me off. Yeah, I wouldn't say I never got nervous. I would be conscious that, look, I'm going into a game, I need to do well here, but I was never going, Jesus, I'm not able to do well or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like your dad was a big part of your career. So when your dad was around, would he be the first kind of fella you'd phone after a game? Like, and would he give you feedback, like you weren't at it today, or fair play to you, you had a stormer, that kind of
He definitely wouldn't give me feedback anyway because he knows.
You wouldn't listen, no?
No, he wouldn't listen. I didn't. I was I had that attitude. I didn't need to be told. When I played poorly, I knew. My dad again was nearly like a soundboard for me. You know. But yeah, no, my dad was a big part of, I say, of my football, of my life.
Yeah.
My dad was an absolute hero of a man. He raised myself and my brother from like I was age 7 when the divorce and all that happened and stuff like that, and he stuck around. Most men wouldn't, and he did. He stuck around and he raised the two of us, and like that after he died. Like, we wouldn't go into big conversations about football or anything like that. Again, he just left me to it, but he was always there.
Yeah.
When he died, it was an awful big hole in my soul, like, because he was the ever present in my life, along with football, as well. And when he was gone, I found it very difficult, yeah, and I still do today. My dad, Jesus, God rest him. He was an amazing man, like, he really was.
Did your dad get to see you play at the top level? Did he get to go over and watch you in the Premier League and play for Ireland as well?
He did. He got to see me. Like, he got to see me playing in the Premier League, and it was a couple of weeks after that. He died, but he did. He got to see me playing in Old Trafford, and it was funny because we grew up. My dad hated United, And it's great that he got to see me playing in Old Trafford. You know, he got out. He was in a hospice at the time, and they let him out for a few hours. So he come up to the house here with his couple of his brothers and a couple of my neighbours across the road there. So, you know, like these things that have happened, you know, I could sit and say, oh, like I miss my dad terribly, but the way things kind of happened, you know, you would have been very proud and stuff like that, you know. Mm.
100%, yeah, 100%. So you end up leaving Birmingham then after a couple of years, and you come back to Ireland, to the League of Ireland. But I think there's a little sabbatical in there, isn't there? There's a couple of months where you're without a club. I mean, was that for a specific reason? Were you maybe injured, or were you kind of disillusioned with the game, or what was that all about?
So, a sabbatical, pal, explain to me when so I can give you the go.
So after you left Birmingham, before you signed back for come back to Dublin, there was a couple of months there where you weren't with anyone.
Yeah, I think what happened was I came back, I had hip surgery.
Yeah.
I had hip surgery, and I wasn't sure whether it was going. This is what I remember now. I could be wrong, like that. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get back playing or not, you know. And I ended up doing a bit of recovery stuff on the hip and got myself into a stage that I was able to. I went back to Sheffield United actually, for a couple of weeks on trial, and then I dislocated my toe. And I just thought, you know what, just go home, relax, settle down. And I came home then and signed for Pats for the fourth time in my life. Mm.
Yeah. Just want to ask you just a couple of questions about playing for Ireland, because I have to. So you played under Trapattoni. Just looking back at your kind of international career, it was really good. I think it was 16 caps, 3 goals. So, and you kind of featured heavily in that Euro 2012 qualifying campaign, and you got picked for the squad then for the Euros. But obviously you got an injury just before the tournament, so couldn't go. Would you again from a mental point of view, was that a bitter blow? One of the biggest of your career, was it?
It was another blow in the career, yeah. Another one like that. I think I'd describe it like falling out of a tree, the top of the tree, hitting a few branches on the way down, and then finally hitting the ground. I think that was another branch on the way down. But yeah, it was disappointing, but I kind of knew inside that I wouldn't be fully fit to go. I had a season where I played a lot of football and I was playing with injuries, and eventually I broke down, like, you know. So like that, it wasn't meant to be. I can say I took part in the qualifications. I done well with the group that were there, Trapattoni and all the players as well, like, you know. And it just wasn't meant to be, you know. I can say that today, but it did hurt, you know. But like that, there's things have happened in my life that are a lot worse than what can hurt you in football. And I think that's where my resilience kind of comes from, you know. I'll always get back up, because there's other things that can happen that are a lot worse, and they have, like, you know. So
yeah. 100%. But you ended up playing a couple of years again, League of Ireland again, to get a string of a few injuries, and you ended up retiring. Now, you do hear about athletes retiring, and you sort of mentioned this at the start of the chat as well, about that kind of loss of identity. Like, you were Keith Fahey, the footballer, for years and years. Now all of a sudden you're not playing football anymore. So was that a difficult thing to accept, or did you almost go the other way? Was there an element of relief? Thank God that's over.
it was very difficult to accept, like that. I think, and I say that today, I don't like being called a footballer, but that's what I was. And when I stopped, I found it very hard to reinvent myself, like, you know. And I done things. I figured out that I was doing like a lifelong habit that I had no control over either, and I had to stop that to start figuring out who I was, like, you know. So yeah, it's very difficult when you retire like that. I can only share my own experience. I think my neighbour, a good friend of mine across the road, Mick Conlon, used to always say, you need to start planning, or like, you need to gain another interest in something. And I just always I brushed it off and thought, it won't happen to me, like, you know, for some reason it won't happen. And I was that obsessed with football and staying in around the team. I had no headspace for anything else, like, you know. And then when it did happen, I retired, and I done a fitness course. I trained to become a personal trainer. It wasn't for me, and I've done a couple of diplomas and stuff, and at the moment, I feel like I have a bit of direction in my life, and possibly I might, and I'm leaning towards doing a social care degree, So I figured out like that the drive to be a footballer took an awful lot out of me, It kept me alive, and it also took a lot out of me. So what's important to me now is meaning and purpose and stuff like that, getting up in the morning knowing that I'm adding something to the world today, and I'm not just taking, which I did for a long time, So yeah, it's been difficult. It's been very difficult, but I think I've learned a lot, while you're in football, you're in a bubble that, in my opinion, isn't real life, and it's very hard. And I say I only seem to learn through pain, and it's very difficult when you're in that bubble to get out of it and then try and recreate who you are. That's why a lot of people, I'm sure, stay in football, because they don't really believe or there's no way out of doing something else, But I don't believe that to be the case. So I have life experiences now today that I can use to mould my future. You know what I mean? So life is good today. Life is good today. It's still like that. I struggle at times, but I can cope. In the past I couldn't cope. Done a lot of stuff that I shouldn't have done, but like that, I'm free today, and I have no regrets. I say I shouldn't have done things, but it doesn't mean I regret them.
Yeah, you talk about that bubble of being in football, and were you ever truly happy, would you say, as a footballer? Now, I mean, to say you were tormented is me being too dramatic, but were you not tormented, but were you almost, you probably loved football, but were you a bit uncomfortable living under such a bright spotlight of Premier League football?
Yeah, I would have been, yeah. I used to be uncomfortable going into a shop to buy something, I wouldn't make eye contact. I wasn't never comfortable in myself, all that social anxiety and stuff, and mental health. People say I have mental health problems, and what does that really mean? I lived my life full of fear, and living like that, I used to push people away, I didn't trust people, all that sort of stuff. So was I happy playing football? I was happy when I was playing football, enjoying it. Does that mean every game, every training session? No. The bits around it, going out to the shops and people stop me for your autograph and all that sort of stuff. Now, people think that if that's what you're playing football for, great, love it. But it wasn't what I played for. I played because it was a game, it was a child, I loved it. And then there was stuff happening that was part of being, I wouldn't say famous, but a professional footballer. You had to go into this character that people want to piece you, and I found it very difficult because I was never really comfortable in myself.
Yeah.
And that would have been the same. If I'd have been a brickie, I wouldn't have felt comfortable going into work. Because it was me. So.
Yeah, I think some people that maybe do suffer from that bit of social anxiety, a lot of them you'll find are probably deep thinking people, which can lead to becoming overthinking people. So I'd be interested to know, because you even mentioned mindfulness earlier before. Have you ever gone down that road of trying to control anxiety, be it with things, could be as simple as journaling, it could be a bit of meditation or anything like that? Have you ever gone down those roads?
I have indeed, pal. Yeah, I do. I practice meditation daily. I do a lot of prayer as well. I have a strong faith, and I never really did, because I always felt alone. I always felt like I was doing life on my own, and I always had to fight everyone. And it's not like that today. I'm still living on my own, all that type of thing. But I'm not alone, And
yeah.
I have a bit of faith. I practice mindfulness. And I try and connect with people, I try and do the things that I didn't really want to do in the past, or I didn't have the strength to do it. I always wanted to isolate and stay away from people, and unless I was drinking and doing other things, which I thought used to connect me with people, and it completely didn't,
Yeah.
So yeah, like that, I practice a different way of life today, even though, you talk about football, but the way I was living when I wasn't playing football wouldn't be an ideal way of any human being. It wouldn't be a great way to live, let's just put it that way. And I don't live like that anymore. And it's not just as simple as choosing that. I have to do things, and I enjoy doing certain things that keep me well, and yeah, I'm able to see the good in the world. You know, I wasn't able to see the good in the world for a long time. You know.
Yeah, be interested to hear you just talk about meditation for a moment, because it is something that still people are very, very confused about. They think it sounds like a bit of an airy fairy kind of a thing, but it can be very, very helpful to some people. So, what got you into that? And can you just give us a bit of a taster of what, like maybe how many minutes you spend doing it, or what exactly you do?
Yeah, meditation. I like that. I think the mind I kind of have, like I believe there's things that we can't see going on in the world. You know what I mean? Good things, bad things, all that sort of stuff. So I have a creative mind as well. You know, and it can be also a destructive mind as well. You know, so meditation for me. I don't leave the house in the morning without doing meditation. I do a lot of prayer as well and practice a bit of faith and stuff like that. So, how did that come about? Um, I was bet into a state of surrender. But I would have tried before I got sober. I would have tried meditation anyway, and I found that it did work. It's very difficult, and people, I'm not sure what people think, but I hear this, oh, it's too hard, like, you know, and I think people might think that you sit there and you meditate and all that, but sometimes it's a struggle with my mind, you know, but if I don't give it a chance to settle down and try and get through the hard bits, it won't, like, you know, so, yeah, without kind of, could I simplify that a little bit for anyone? Look, I believe that there's something out there, and you have to let it in to see the good way of life. And I practice that sort of stuff, you know.
Were you always a religious fella, or is this more in recent times too?
Now, we mentioned religion, spirituality. I don't like to shut the door on religion or spirituality, but I think when people hear of prayer, they think religion straight away. You know, I've developed the faith through like that, through doing things the wrong way. You know, and I've surrendered and realised that there's something out there that can help me. You know, and like that, when I look back at my life, although I've struggled throughout my life with my own stuff and like I've been well looked after, you know, anything that I've really wanted, I've kind of got, like, you know, so is that me doing all that? I don't think so, you know, so it's about giving back now, and I suppose I always probably believed, you know, in something, you know, I always believed in ghosts.
Same, yeah. Did you ever see one, no?
Oh, no, I didn't. I would have joked about doing Ouija boards and all that, and I never done it. But I always had that kind of mind that there is something out there, you know. And I try and connect to that power, you know, because my life's a lot easier when I do, you know. And it's hard, but it's a lot easier than the way it was, you know.
So I feel like then, for the future, are you a little bit more drawn to helping people, with like who are suffering from maybe mental health issues, rather than maybe going back into football? Would I be right in saying that?
I'm definitely transitioning away from football anyway.
Yeah.
Where it's taken me, like I spoke earlier a little bit about possibly doing a social care degree, and that's kind of where I feel I'm being drawn to now at the moment, you know. So yeah, I'm just trusting the kind of the process that I'm doing at the moment, and I feel like there's direction, that there's something happening, that things are working out again for me, you know. So yeah, football. I was offered to go in and do a bit of coaching there a couple of weeks ago with someone, and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I thought, why are you going back into it, Keith? You know, why? I don't think it's for me anymore. You know, you don't have to be in football to be able to help kids out, or whatever, and you know, so yeah.
Do you still keep an eye on football? Like, would you still watch Birmingham? Are you still an Arsenal supporter?
Jesus, am I still an Arsenal supporter? I watched them the other day, and I don't lose sleep, put it that way, when they lose. Birmingham, I would like throw an eye on them. Rovers, Pats. Do I watch them? No, I've seen the first half of the match the other day, but I had something else that was more important, so I went and done something else, you know. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I haven't got great interest in it like that. Like, I enjoy helping people in any way I can, and I don't think the coaching which we think is the most important thing, all this coaching and stuff like that, is the most important thing for kids up to a certain age, you know.
Definitely, yeah. Look, you've had a great story, but there is two questions I ask everyone before we finish up. So the first thing is, if you were to pick one athlete in the history of sport, can be from any sport at all, that you admire most from a mental point of view, who would you pick and why?
Probably Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
bad, huh?
I think it speaks for itself, like, you know.
Yeah, no need for description there. Yeah, animal. And the last one then is, if you were to go back and give a younger version of yourself some advice, again from a mental point of view. So let's just say when you go over to Arsenal, you're 14, 15. If you were to give that version of yourself a bit of advice on his mentality, what would you say?
What would I say? Trust yourself, you know. Trust yourself. Yeah, I think like it goes back to that kind of giving kids ownership, you know, like we're taking away all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Trust yourself. It's going to be your life, your career, your game of football. It's not coaches and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that was brilliant. Like I said a minute ago, you've had some story, Keith. So brilliant for coming on to the podcast. So thanks very much for taking the time.
Cheers, pal.
Massive thanks to Keith Fahey for coming on to the podcast this week. Like I said at the very start of the podcast, one thing I really enjoyed about this week's episode is the fact that Keith gave a very different perspective on what life as a professional footballer is actually like compared to what the vast majority of us, probably 99% of us, think once you make it in England in the Premier League, that it's kind of happily ever after there. But obviously that's not the case for most footballers really, and I think Keith explained really well maybe the challenges he's faced throughout his career. So it was brilliant to hear him speak so openly and honestly about his whole career from start to finish and what his plans for the future are. So really enjoyed that one. So massive thanks, Keith, this week for coming onto the podcast. And thanks everyone else for watching as well. And I'll see you next time with a new athlete. Thanks.